My guest today is a QHHT practitioner, which is the short way of saying someone who practices in the art of quantum healing hypnosis. She's a woman who loves exploring consciousness through hypnosis and meditation and empowering people to recognize that all-knowing part within themselves. She facilitates one-on-one QHHT and quantum healing sessions, as well as running group workshops and meditations on past lives, galactic star families, and higher self connection. I'm like a kid in a candy store hanging to talk to her about all things consciousness, healing, and what we as humans have access to in a realm that so many of us know so little about and yet have a natural thirst to understand. Well, at least I do. Outside of her work, which for her really isn't work, and how could it be? She must have such an interesting life. My guest is a wife and a fur mum to her staffy, Rosie. She enjoys growing her food in her vegetable garden and playing billiards and learning about every interesting topic she comes across, sometimes to the point of obsession. And I can totally understand that. You guys are going to be on the edge of your seats for this one, folks, so enjoy the show. Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining another episode of the Skin I'm In podcast. I'm your host, Chanel, and this is a place where women can tune in to gain peace through clarity, purpose through inspiration, and the permission to be themselves through the stories of other women. If you're enjoying these episodes so far, click the like, share, and subscribe button so that more women like you can be positively impacted by the stories in this podcast. Welcome to the Skin I'm In podcast, Nadia. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, really well. I have been really looking forward to having this conversation with you. Like I was telling you offline, I find you so interesting. I find what you do really interesting. So let's break it down for the people. You are, I don't even say you are a QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner. What is that and what can it do for people?
Yeah, good question. So quantum healing hypnosis technique, it's actually the hypnosis technique that was developed by Dolores Cannon. So sometimes people have heard of, QHHT, or they've heard of Dolores, or both. So it really started off many years ago as simply like a past life regression experience. But it really evolved from there into what it is today, hence the name change. And essentially it takes clients back to a past life or a past incarnation. I say that because, there's 20 different ways you could go here, but, what is a past life is the first question. Is it a life from the 1800s or, from thousands of years ago, or is it another time when you existed or when your consciousness existed outside of a physical body, or when you existed perhaps on another planet? So it could be anything. So we allow clients, subconscious or higher self, to take them to the most appropriate time and place or life for them to see and experience. We love, asking lots of questions around that, experiencing all of that, getting lots of data and information for the client during that part. But then it goes a bit further in that we actually connect with the subconscious or higher self. And we, at that point, are able to ask lots of questions on behalf of the client. They come in with a list of questions, and we find out whatever they want. I mean, the subconscious or higher self, it's like that part of you that it knows everything, right, about you. No one else will know anything more than what your subconscious or higher self does. So tapping in directly with that and getting answers, clarification, not only on the questions they brought in, but also on the experience that it brought forward. Because sometimes the subconscious or higher self can have an interesting way of presenting information. They'll always do it in a way that, the client understands, but sometimes it'll be a little bit more symbolic, or it could, it's really interesting to see how certain things, you know, can mean something to someone. I may not have interpreted it that way, but when you ask the subconscious, why did you show them X, Y, Z, it provides a lot of clarity and just puts all those pieces together for someone, if that makes sense. So, because it could vary so much depending on what experience they have. Yeah, that's sort of the QHHT in a nutshell. It's very transformative. You know, I think what people get out of it, again, is completely different for everyone, because people will get what they need. So in a broader way of looking at it, I suppose people get maybe some answers like the next steps in their lives. Sometimes people may have some limiting beliefs, or they don't even know they have these limiting beliefs or roadblocks, whatever people call them, why they're not achieving certain things in their life. There could be many different things that come through. Sometimes there's a lot of healing as well. So it could be, you know, even physical healings I've seen, experienced. So yeah, lots of different things. It's amazing how powerful our subconscious and our high self really is, you know.
So what I'm theorizing out of this, and I mean, I believe in spirit, the spirit realm, and souls reincarnating. So this for me is a confirmation that our soul comes in and out of different timelines, and we're able to access those timelines through connecting with our higher self, because that higher self is aware of every experience and timeline that soul has reincarnated into.
Yeah, it's like you tap, well, essentially in that space, you're tapping into the quantum field. So the quantum field, I mean, people know it by different names. You know, some people call it the ether, even the Akashic records. It's essentially that part that has every piece of information. So the client is able to, in a very deep state of relaxation, access that information. And it sort of gets filtered through their higher self and their subconscious, because I mean, if you think about it, when you access essentially everything, you know, not all of it is relevant to you. So your higher self and subconscious will pick what it is and bring it forward. So that's the way I sort of visualize it, if that makes sense. You know, so yeah, and you know, the idea of souls continuing, it's a really, I mean, it's always an area that's fascinated me, you know, since I was little, you know, and it's really, I suppose, comforting to do this work as well, and just hearing of all these different experiences. And sometimes people as well think, oh, you know, that's why I don't like swimming in this lifetime. Like there are sometimes things that make sense that they've never really thought of before, that perhaps, you know, it comes through, its energy, or, you know, whatever that's come through from a previous life. And that can even be fears as well. You know, sometimes people have irrational fears of something, you know, an irrational fear of, I don't know, flying. I had a client once who actually, she wasn't so much a fear of flying. She loved flying, loved travel. But she said every time the plane came into land, she would just feel really tense. She didn't like the landing. And funnily enough, the past life that she went to, she actually, well, it was a male in the, I want to say the war. It was like war times, but not fighting in the war. It was more, what do they call it? What they do, like helpful work, essentially, like taking food to like different places and things like that. Or and she was a pilot there, and she actually died in a landing, a bad landing. And so for that, it made sense. And she was like, oh my gosh, this makes sense now. You know, why I tense up. I'd never understood it. And yeah, it's funny. I'd since spoken to her many months after, and she'd taken a flight, and she said that it had just completely gone away. She doesn't tense up on landing anymore, because I suppose I call it the human brain. You know, a human brain now understands where that comes from, and it can let go of that fear. It's not, you know, it stops becoming, I suppose, an irrational fear. It makes it rational in some sense, but they know it's not connected to now. And so they can let it go. You know, I think we all have these weird fears and we don't know where they come from. So, yeah fascinating.
I didn't realize that past life regression has evolved to QHHT. And I mean, you obviously know Many Lives, Many Masters.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite books of all time. So interesting. What do you have people coming to you for generally? Do people know something's not right, or is it that they're dealing with some trauma and they're seeking to heal it? Like what kind of person is usually booking in with you, and what are they trying to get out of it?
Yeah, look, there are so many. So people love, it's really a combination. People who are curious as well may come. But more so, I think it's people, like you say, that have some kind of trauma in their life, whether they know it on a conscious level or not. And what I mean by that is, sometimes when we think of trauma, we think of, abuse or car accident or, something that's really, traumatic in that sense. However, sometimes, just being, I don't know, the perceived least favourite child can have an impact, and they probably don't even think about that, or been picked on in grade 2. Like, it could just be anything so trivial that they hold on to. So when people come to me, even if it's just out of curiosity, their higher self, subconscious, we use that term interchangeably, will bring forward things that they need right now. So let's say something happened to someone many years ago and they think they've even forgotten about it, they're over it. But that one thing may be stopping them from progressing forward in life in whatever way that may be, holding them back because that has created a belief or something similar. The subconscious will bring that forward. And what I really love about that is that because we allow the subconscious to choose what it brings forward, the client wouldn't have said, oh, this incident from all these years ago, I want to work on that, because consciously they don't know that that's what's stopping them. They're not aware on a conscious level, but that is actually what they need. Does that sort of make sense? Like it's really, really bringing forward what because, I certainly don't know what they need. And often clients on a conscious level don't know what they need. So just leaving it open to whatever comes forward is so powerful, because, it's going to bring forward the most relevant things. So mostly people, it's coming forward with things like even repeating patterns in people's lives. I'm always attracting the same partner. I'm always, I'm never happy in my jobs. I'm always getting fired. I don't know. It could just be things that just keep happening over and over and over again. You think, why? Like, why is this happening to me? And often, we have these repeating patterns because there are things that we need to learn, or things that we need to, learn and experience and integrate. And if we haven't done that yet, guess what? We're just going to get presented the same thing over and over again until we get it. And so being able to get clarity on those as well and find out why certain things are happening, so that, they can then go, oh, okay, this is what I need to get from it. And in a lot of cases, sometimes it's just that realization, getting that lesson can actually make that pattern stop. Or it could be a case of, right, now I know what it is I need to learn. I haven't quite got there yet, but it sets them on the right path so that they can do whatever it is they need to do to learn and to integrate so that it can stop. So many things, even physical healings too. Mental things, anxiety, depression. It's really actually limitless. If you think about tapping into an all-knowing source, it's really limitless as to why people can come. So it's certainly never boring.
I can't imagine. As you're talking, I just was thinking of this time that, and I realize now what she must have, what her work really was. I was referred to this woman. It's back when I used to live in Sydney. I grew up in Sydney. And she worked out of her house. And Nadia, I kid you not, she had like 20 cats. And I remember walking into this house going, I feel like I've stepped into another time. It was the weirdest feeling. The air was different. The light was different. It was very strange. And I sat at the table and she said to me, you're going to continue having your heart broken. And I was like, what? Who are you? You don't even know me. And she's just looking at me really eerily. And she said, you were a man in one of your past lives, a gypsy, a pirate. You'd go from town to town and you slept with women and you were a drunk. And in this lifetime, you're being paid back for that. I was like, what? What do you mean? And so she explained to me, I was this guy, olden days, obviously, traveling by boat, stopping at towns, having relations with women, heading off and relieving lots of heartbreak in the process. And I was an absolute drunk, didn't really know what I was doing, and I was a bit of an a-hole.
Yeah.
And she said, so in this lifetime, you're going to continue to have your heart broken until that karma's broken. And I remember leaving that day thinking to myself, holy moly, I was in my 20s at the time. And I thought, it's so true. I keep having my heart broken. I keep giving and then just having my heart shattered. And from that day forward, I started to ask myself every time someone came into my life that, was, similar patterns, it changed from why is this happening to me to what is this here to teach me?
Mm-hmm.
And my perception of relationships changed. My perception of men changed in that, like my relationship with men. And so when I think of transformations like that, and it's only something small, right? But in that moment, I thought to myself, wow, this could really be the reason why I keep choosing people who, are going to hurt me in this lifetime. So now I can see it much quicker. What transformation stories do you have that you can share with the listeners? That's obviously, because I assume there's a lot that's confidential, but what can you share with the listeners of, some of the things that have been possible for some of the clients that you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know that, even with my own experience, obviously I've had a few sessions myself. I suppose perk of the job, you know people and you can do things. And it's interesting because the life you just explained is very similar to one of mine. That was, I was thinking, oh, hang on. It was very similar, although I didn't, I was also like if I had to guess the time frame, I'd say maybe 1500s. Like I was a male running a merchant ship and we would go from place to place, but I would be transporting goods. And so I think I remember like a crate of tomatoes or like they were just different vegetables and goods that we would take from place to place and island to island. And I had this partner, this woman, and I just remember this horrible, obviously in that life I probably didn't think that way, but now I did as I was experiencing it. I was essentially using this person, and she was always sad to see me leave and I just couldn't care. I thought she was clingy. I just, it sounds terrible, but I just, I was like, oh, I don't really, And, we were from place to place and I was a horrible person. I was stealing from people too, like gold and coins. So I would be hiding them under in the storage of the ship and everything amongst all the goods. And I was this really horrible person. And I ended up dying by someone that I stole from. I said I wasn't hiding. Someone I stole from many years later found me and killed me. It actually strangled me to death. Like came into my thing and found me and killed me by hand. And it was actually quite interesting because I was like, oh, I always hated ever since a child being touched on the neck. I can't stand it. Even if it used to be a bit of a joke amongst friends, this thing, they would come up to me, like sneak up behind me and sort of put their hands like behind my, and not even touch me, but all of a sudden I would like cringe and turn around. I'd be, what? And they'd be like, how do you know we're there? Because, it is the strangest thing that became a joke. But so that sort of explained that part of it. But I suppose how it changed my life was at the time I was going through, or I had been through probably quite a few years before actually, about 9 years beforehand, I went through a really bad time in my life where I was betrayed by some people who were very, very close to me, some very close friends, and it came completely out of left field, did not see it coming. And at the time, it was probably worse than any relationship breakup I'd ever had, because I lost several friends, almost lost my job because that was intertwined with it. All these things were going on, and it was a really, really tough time in my life. And I thought I had gotten over it, but obviously I hadn't, because when I had this past life experience, Joe, the funny thing is, to this day, I cannot remember the roles. I'd have to listen back to the recording, the roles that these people played in that life that I had. But all of a sudden I could understand why they did what they did to me. And it wasn't like in this life, and it wasn't anything I had done to them in this life, which I think is what I was so stuck on, because, you know, you think, what have I done to this? Why are they doing this? And you start beating yourself up. And I didn't realize at the time that was creating a lot of blocks in my life. I wasn't going forward with what I wanted to do. I'd lost a lot of confidence. You know, everything that comes along with that at the time I actually didn't realize. It was only in hindsight. And so for me, at the time of having the session, I just thought it's a really cool experience. I was talking about it. I wasn't actually a practitioner at this stage when I had that first session. And I thought, wow, you know, this is really cool, and didn't think a whole lot more of it, to be honest, until one day I was driving down the Eastern Freeway in Melbourne, you know, sort of white line fever, zoning out. And all of a sudden the penny dropped. And I was like, oh, my gosh, like in the last 5 or 6 months, whatever it had been, really done a lot in my life. I've done these things I didn't think I would do, just like small things but big in the big scheme of things. You know what I mean? Like whether it's speaking up at work or going for promotions or just stepping outside of your comfort zone so that you could do and achieve certain things. And I thought, wow, where did that come from? You know, like I just sort of started thinking, and then I was like, oh, my gosh, this is because of that session. Like I realized that not just the past life experience, but the advice and whatnot that my subconscious had given me when we connected with that, about that situation and about how to approach things in my life moving forward, I'd followed some of that advice. And I was like, oh, my gosh, like I can't believe that made this impact. It just really threw me in a positive way. And then it was like another sledgehammer to the head straight after that, is this is what you need to do. And so that's how I got into it as well. But, you know, it was, for me, it was so transformative in that sense. You know, something I didn't think I was holding on to or that was holding me back, gaining understanding and clarity around that without me even realizing it. I think it's because my human brain understood it. I was able to move forward. You know, I think as humans we need to understand everything. We want to know the how, what, why, when, and once we do, we can sort of go, oh, okay, that's the compartment you belong in, off you go, and put it aside and move on. But I didn't realise I was holding on to it, you know. And so for me that was huge. And I know from clients, because QHHT really is a one session type thing. It's not like, you know, like a therapy thing where you go every week or every month.
Right.
So I don't generally on purpose. I don't generally follow up a lot of clients. I always leave it open for them to contact me. So, and then of course, you know, I hear things through people they refer and stories. So, you know, I think some of my favorites transformations would be, you know, I had a lady who came to me severely depressed. She actually drove 7 hours to see me. 7 or 9 hours.
This sounds interesting.
Yeah. But I just said to her, I was like, you realise you probably passed like 20 other practitioners on the way here? And she was like, no, I don't know. I spoke with you. I want to see you. I was like, okay, fine. That's, you know, whatever. I get that. You have to gel with the person that you're seeing, you know, in whatever you do. But she sat down and she said, I'm depressed, and essentially she wanted to end her life. She said, I've tried everything. She's like, you're my last hope. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Pressure much?
Pressure. I did think that. I was like, oh, my gosh, pressure. And then I thought, no, like I thought, you know, just treat it like any other client, you know, because at the end of the day, it's not me anyway who does the work. It's them and their subconscious. So it's like, okay, treat it like any other. And she had an interesting session. I just remember it was fairly uneventful in the sense that, no amazing type of story to report or anything like that. But she got the information she needed and off she went. And she contacted me a couple of weeks later because she saw it was an online or some new group session thing I was running, and she was inquiring about that. And I asked her, I said, how are you? How have you been? And she said, never been better. She's like, I have not had that thought once. She actually joked. She said, you're making me spend all this money. She joked that because I've gone out and I've bought new furniture for myself and new clothes. Because what she used to do, she used to hold on to her money and spend it on her children who did not appreciate her either, her adult children. She refused to spend it on herself because she didn't value herself. She was always living on hand-me-down things. And I think for me that was huge because I thought, wow, and I remember looking back on her session thinking, how did her session do that? Because for me, it seemed like a rather uneventful session. She was shown a few things, she was given a few answers, but for her, the information that she got was exactly what she needed. And that's what always happens. People just get exactly what they need, even if it doesn't make sense to me, but that's probably my favourite transformation that I've heard of, I think, because it's just so impactful. That really touched my heart, that one. And then, I've heard of other ones with physical healings and things like people suffering from fibromyalgia or knee pain, or a lady came, she had a weird unexplained buzzing in her head for 12 months and doctors couldn't place it, but the subconscious was able to remove that. Things like that can happen a lot too. But, I think the one with that lady with the depression, that will always stay with me. That was huge for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. You would hear some eventful things. And so when we talk about healing, living in the society that we do today where everyone's expecting it to be some miraculous point in time where everything shifts and changes, and a lot of the times it really isn't. And I think that one of the things that I love about that story is that it's something so small that significantly changed this woman's life, and just to be able to see herself in her own life. I think that a lot of women kind of erase themselves from their lives, and especially when they have children, and they give so much. So I love that. I love it.
Yeah,
like my heart hurt for her. I'm like, oh, this poor woman. Like, you go, girl. Go buy yourself new things.
Yeah, I know. And she was laughing. She was like, oh, you're making me spend all this money. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And, she was like saying in a positive way. But, it was quite funny. Yeah. And I was like, wow, and that's why, we do this work, because people come and go and it doesn't, I suppose, impact me. Makes no difference to me what type of session they have. But if it can do something for them that changes their life or makes something easier or whatever the case may be, then it's done its job. I think that's like I say, in any type of healing thing, and it's never overnight. Mine was months later, I realised, and it was a gradual thing, in my case. It was these little things I was doing along the way, and I didn't realise it was from that session. So it's only the power of hindsight, I suppose, or the clarity you get through hindsight that you see it.
So then you had said that it's a one-session thing. So say, for instance, myself, I dream. I dream very deeply. I dream about the past and I see the future. And there have been many times, I would say 90% of the times, the things that I've seen in my dreams have come to fruition. I wonder sometimes the things that I see in my dreams of the future, if I'm meant to actually be writing them down. I keep waking up thinking it's a chapter in a book. So I do. I start writing them down. And the things that I see from my past are my past lives experiences. And I've been in situations. I have a spiritual mentor who, I remember the first time I saw her, she sat down and she doesn't really do cards, but she does all these scribbles on paper. And the first thing she said to me was, you see things in your dreams, don't you? And at that time I was having a very confronting dream. And I'd never told anyone. And it was in a past life. And I was like, I can't tell anyone this stuff. They're going to think I'm crazy. And I know now that I, was a healer in a past life. I was burnt at the stake. It was in France and all these kinds of things. But that dream stopped happening once she gave me clarity on that. But there is many other things that I experienced, like, bodily pains, intuition, like intuitive kind of clues. If I came to someone, a QHHT practitioner, I said, I've got these 8 things that I want to work on or dig deep into. Is it possible for me to do that in a session? Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. I'm like, fist bump. All right. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people come in with, I often say to people, come in with a list of at least 6 to 8 sort of questions. Sometimes people come in with like 50. Like it,
Yeah, that'd be me. I'd come in with a novel.
You'd be like yeah. Yeah, you'd be like, I'll have a truck delivering them the day before. Is that okay?
Yeah. So you can review it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there's really not, like, it's amazing how much you can get through in a session. And also it's amazing how, and I always find this fascinating and never ceases to amaze me, that people may come in with 20 questions about 20 different things. And more often than not, there's 1, 2, maximum 3, like usually 1 or 2 key themes or key issues, whatever it may be, that actually link them all together. And you couldn't even pick it, like from before them going through the experience and it all coming about. There's no way in a lot of cases you could really guess what the connection could be, because a lot of things seem really unconnected. But having said that, when you do have the session, the information comes out and you realise what's connected and how, it makes complete sense. From something that you look at, you go, I have no idea how this is going to be connected. And then when it does, and you kind of go, wait, it just blows my mind every time. And sometimes, even in a session, a client will, let's say, have an experience in their past life, and you think to yourself, oh, I think I know what this means or what this is about. This makes sense. This really ties up with this question that they had. And, I think that. I never say it because, most of the time I'm wrong. So, but it seems so logical, the connection. And then you ask the subconscious or the higher self, well, what was this about? And who was this person in her life? And blah, blah. And it will say something completely different to what I thought. And I'm always like, oh my God, that's actually 200% more logical. I just did not pick it. It just did not come out as obvious. And even a lot of the times for the client, they'll be like, oh my gosh, wow, that actually makes complete sense to them. But they just couldn't see that before, and it just blows my mind every time how that happens. So even though someone may come in with 20,000 things, a lot of it may be connected.
Yeah.
I still can't quite work out how that happens.
Do you ever have to clear the space? Like, does energy stay with you when you do some of these things?
No, not with this. No, okay. The client, I mean, they go into their experience, and then we sort of, I mean, as part of the process, we close it off at the end. We disconnect from the life and from the subconscious and things like that. So I suppose in a sense that closes that door. But there's nothing that really lingers around. I mean, I know definitely when we do connect with the subconscious after they've had their initial past life experience, you could feel the energy for sure. Some people's is stronger, that comes through stronger than others. It almost to the point where, well, for me, I know everyone experiences it differently, but when you get like all of a sudden like a cold shiver or something, just get like you just want to go, like something just comes over you. So sometimes that will happen. I really have to stop myself from like going, because like
I don't
want to. Yeah, so I don't want to wake them up or like freak them out while they're under, and I don't want it because we record the session for them, right? So it gets audio recorded, and I'm like, I really don't want that on the recording. So a lot of the time I'll just be like, you can actually really, some people's higher self comes through so strongly, you feel it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely leaves at the end with them. It's, it's not, doesn't belong here. So we don't have to worry about, things like that. Like you may have to do another type of, I think energy work. I don't even know if that's the right term for this, but in other types of energy work, you don't really have to worry about that. But I get that some people, like to, and some people might have their own little rituals that they like to do if they prefer, and that's okay, whether it be the client or the practitioner that might like to do something. But I just, in my own personal experience, I haven't had the need or even the urge, I suppose, to do that, I don't know, like if you've ever found that you've had to do things like that or have had, feelings that you've had to. But, in this I haven't had to.
Well, for anyone who's listening or watching that's interested in getting to this field of work, I just sometimes think that there are people that are really sensitive to energies and there are people that can manage that state. And so if someone is wanting to get into this line of work and is aware that they're sensitive to energies, whether it may impact them or not. Be interested to know.
I think it is different. Yeah, I think it is different for everyone, but I just know my own experience, I haven't had it. And a lot of practitioners I speak to say it's not an issue. I tend to think, you feel it, you actually feel it close off at the end, and the way we do it, we sort of close it all off and we make sure like they leave with that energy, the energy belongs with the client. So nothing really gets left behind that I know of.
Yeah. Actually, I'm curious, has anyone done any field studies on someone being in this state and monitored their brain activity? Like, have we been able to find if there's any parts of the brain that actually light up during these processes, or if there's like a field? Because I'm sure you're aware of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I know he does a lot of stuff in that quantum field stuff. Totally butchering what his work is. He's amazing, obviously, but do we have studies that show which part of the brain is being accessed by the higher source?
Yeah, interesting. It's funny that you say that because no, not that I'm aware of within QHHT anyway, not that I'm aware of, but it was actually only just maybe 2 days ago. I've been thinking about it for a while, but it was only maybe 2 days ago I started looking again at you can get those brainwave monitors. Those because I was trying to find ones because I've thought about it for a long time. I would love to monitor and see what happens with brainwaves in a session. But so it's really interesting that you asked that question because I have been thinking about it. But not that I'm aware of, but I do know that when clients do get into that state, I know in terms of brainwave state, they do enter theta. Sometimes like a very low theta or high delta, people are like right bordering sleep. If they become really, really relaxed. But in terms of what areas of the brain lights up or what happens when, I would love to monitor that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. It's just hard to find a brainwave monitor. All the ones I can find for home use are like, they'll play certain, like they're more for meditation, so they'll play different musics or tones depending on, your state to keep it up. I'm like, I don't want that. I just want something to monitor and record what's happening.
Yeah.
So I've got to try and find.
Oh my God. And if you do, please tell me because
if anyone knows. I would love to try it. And I'd love to try it on people because I want to know if different people, because there would have to be some correlation between what happens, through each step of the process. And I'd love to just have all this data and just compare to see, okay, at this point everyone seems to do X, Y, Z, or whoever, whatever it could be. I don't know because I haven't done it. But it would be very interesting, I feel. But, I mean, that's just me, I suppose. I like to dig in it and learn about things, and that's part of that. I just can't find a brainwave monitor that can do that. That's probably under, thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes. Yet, Nadia, you have not found it yet.
It exists. I'm sure it does.
It's coming to you.
It exists. I've always been that way. If there's something, I'll find it. So I'll find it. But, yeah, I'd love to do something like that. Yeah. Definitely. I think that'd be so good.
I feel really emotional. I don't know why. Like, I just, when I think of the way we live our lives at the moment and just how much crap we feed our children and adults, and the effect it has on our brains, the effect it has on our third eye, and how we're calcifying our pineal glands. And, by, I think, by the age of 17, boys, I don't remember what the study was for girls, boys have almost completely calcified their pineal gland. So, like, that is scary. Like, that for me, from my understanding, is part of our connection to the higher source. And so I'm like, what are we doing? Is it by design? Is there another greater source that's trying to cut us off from being able to access what I think our ancient ancestors used to be able to do? When my husband and I absolutely love finding documentaries, and a lot of them are very amateur because you can't put these things on mainstream, aside from Graham Hancock, who talks about all these places in the world where there are sites that are clearly to connect with the high source, or the star people, and all those types of stories that have been told us are just myth. But there is so much evidence that something existed that is so much greater than us, and our ancestors knew that. And we've forgotten what that knowledge and that wisdom is, what that connection is. And I wonder if a big part of why we have so many chemicals in our water and our food and things like that is to stop us from being able to fully utilize the capacity our brain and our heart has to connect to that higher source that we should absolutely, it's where we're from. It's where we're from.
Yes.
We, in all kinds of ways, we are all star seeds from some star family. At least that's what I believe. Yeah. If there's anything you can add to that, please tell me.
Yeah, I think
stuff.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think definitely the chemicals and the crap and how we live at the moment is not conducive to having a good connection. It's not. Whether it's intentional or not, that's I suppose a different question.
That's my conspiracy real.
But that's I do think there is an element of that. Just the other week, actually, I was, again, it happens a lot when I'm driving or zoning out. So I was driving along and I was actually thinking, this is how my brain works, right? I'll ping from different thing to different thing, and I can't quite explain it. But I was driving along and I was thinking, gosh, my hand's been dry lately, like random thought, and I was like, and this random thought you have, and I was like, why are my hands so dry? And I was like, then I thought, maybe I'm not drinking enough, like maybe I'm not hydrated. I don't drink as much as I used to. And my brain started thinking about that. And I was like, oh, I don't really drink as much as I used to. And then I started thinking about, that message, drink 8 glasses of water a day, whatever. And I was like, oh, no, I don't really drink that. And then I thought, where did that message come from? I was like, actually, where did that message come from? Why? Why 8 glasses? And as soon as I thought that again, because my mind was like, why this, why that? So somehow I've gone from dry hands to why do we have to, we're told to drink 8 glasses of water a day? And then all of a sudden I just had this, like, it wasn't me, I call it like a download, it was just like a bang given to me, and it just said the fluoride. And I was like, what? The fluoride. And I was driving along, and I mean, I've had a fluoride filter on my tap for years. I mean, you can't obviously eliminate completely unless you never do anything or go anywhere. But I was driving along and I thought, oh, surely not. And so, of course, when I got to where I was going, I jumped on my phone and started Googling, and I was like, Googled when fluoride was added to the water. I can't remember this. It was a few weeks ago. Maybe it was like somewhere in the 40s or 50s or something like that, right? It's like the first time it was ever added to drinking water. And I Googled then the 8 glasses of water a day message that we're being told when that started the same year. And it actually, there are all these things.
Sick.
Yeah, and it actually said that I actually said that there were no studies or anything to back it up. It was just one of these sort of government food authority bodies that somehow just decided 8 glasses is what we needed. And no studies or anything to back it up. They just thought they would tell everyone to drink 8 glasses of water a day and start pushing that message. And I was like, no way. Like, I was like, how did I not make this connection before? One of those things where you think, wow, it just seems so obvious when you mention it, but just never even thought, where did the 8, you hear something your whole life and you never think, where did this actually come from?
Oh, you're assuming there's a study behind it.
Yeah,
no study, not a paid study.
No study. I mean, I don't know if there's been studies since, but definitely at the time it was released. And funnily enough, I found some articles that said in places in Europe they don't fluorinate the water. They never have. Some started and never, and then since stopped. But yeah, a lot of places in Europe don't. And again, back then it was because they were saying, well, what's the point? There's no studies. There's not even any studies to show that fluoride helps with anything in terms of tooth decay and things like that, ingesting it. No studies to prove that it helps. So why should we do that? And they didn't. And what I find interesting about that is when you look at world events and you look at times where governments try to control populations and things like that, who kicks up the most stink? Europe and places like that. They're always protesting and things. And, other places not so much. They do, but not so much. I know in Europe I've got a lot of family in Europe. It's a lot harder for government to sort of, I suppose, pull the wool over people's eyes or change things and things like that because there'll just be uproar,
I think that they question it a bit more.
Yeah.
Where I was born, I mean, nowadays it's a lot more compliant, but I know that, my family, it was always a thing of you just question things. You're like, but why? You can't tell me what to do is kind of, where I'm from, you can't tell them what to do.
Yes. Yeah. Same thing. They question everything, right? But here, not so much, or just in the general population, not so much. And I just wonder if that's something to do with it, because I'm like, well, what's the difference? I mean, obviously
after generations, I've noticed that, I've only got one living grandparent now, but we've been here 30 years and she would have been here for 30 years before that. And so, now she's very old, but, my mum's generation, I'm the only one in the family that's like, I'm not listening. So you can imagine during COVID, I was the person at the dining table. Well, not that I went up to Sydney because I couldn't, but, I've always been the one who's questioning. I'm like, why do we just take it? I just feel like my ancestors, I just always have a thing in the back of my mind. Someone's always saying to me, that doesn't feel right. And I'm like, that is wisdom that I know I'm getting. This doesn't feel right. I need to listen to my intuition. But I've noticed that as we keep having the next generation, it's more compliance. Trust whatever body it is that's governing whatever system it is that they've created. You just trust it. You just blindly trust it. No, why would they possibly do anything horrible to us? That's just conspiracy theories. I'm like, they've all come true.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Look at it now. But you're right. It's that intuition. I think we get cut off from that. And
why do you think that is? Does that have anything to do? Can we reaccess that through the Akashic records? Is there something that we can just? Look, if you're someone who's compliant, you're not about to go do some work on that because you're like, well, I'm happy living this way.
Yep. Yeah. I think, look, there's probably, there's actually a multitude of reasons, but I think, that can we connect here? I believe everyone can, of course they can. It's probably our most natural state, ultimately it's our most natural state. And like you were saying, just those really ancient civilizations, they didn't have the distractions that we have today. They don't have the chemicals that we have today. They're not glued to their phones, their TVs. They're not inhaling car fumes and drinking fluoride and God knows, all the pesticides and things like that. So you know, I think there's all these different reasons as to why we lose connection. You know, I think it's always there. I don't think we ever really lose it as such. I think we just become, I don't know, we just ignore it. I think is probably a better way to put it. You know, people, I mean, I'm yet to meet someone who can't tell me a time that they've just known something to be true without having any proof or someone telling them they just know, or had an inkling about something that ended up being right. You know, there's not a person I can meet that. So I think we all have that. I think we just tend to ignore it, or whether, you know, intentionally ignore it because we don't trust it, or it sort of gets drowned out by all these other distractions that we have. You know, set the alarm, get up, go to work, you know, take kids to school, you know, worry about, you know, what you're going to have for dinner, cook dinner, like do the washing, like all this stuff that we just deal with. You know, watch the news, you know, like I've got
absolutely
a
not
series, and yeah, I know, I haven't watched the news in years. It's funny, people say to me all the time, "Oh my gosh," blah, 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 and I'm like, I got no idea what's happening. Like, what? I'm like, unless someone tells me about it, I don't know. I'm like, not that I don't care what's going on in the world, of course I do, but I'm sure if it's something I can do something about, I'll know about it, or I'll somehow, you know, be involved in it. Otherwise, there's no point in me contributing. When I say contributing, like, sometimes I think that the more that we sort of think about things that are going on, thinking about wars or thinking about, we tend to manifest and create it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's no point in me putting my energy into that too. I can't do anything about it. You know, so I focus on maybe what I can control in my immediate world. So definitely I think that has a bigger impact. But yeah, I think we all have this connection to our intuition. I think it just gets drowned out, or we ignore it. But then, you know, all the other things come into it too, you know, the calcification of the pineal gland, gosh knows what other effects chemicals and things have on us too. You know, there'll probably never be any studies into that. But
yeah, I mean, personal experience. We had a water filtration system, a whole house filtration system put into our property that we moved into earlier this year. And then at the tap, we put a reverse osmosis. So that's double the filtration, out goes the fluoride. And before we moved here, and before, you know, we didn't have it obviously at our last place. And I used to say to my husband, I swear to God, it smells like gas in the shower. Like, I smell gas. Can you not smell gas? And he's like, no, I have a sensitive nose. And so I'm like, I'm literally sniffing the water and I'm like, I smell gas. I smell chlorine. I smell gas. Anyway, so once we put the system in here, my skin I had no dry skin through winter. I had developed psoriasis in 2021, or at least 2022, early 2022. That's completely calmed down. I noticed that after my showers, my eyes used to burn. Now they don't. I've noticed that I don't feel really lethargic after a shower, whereas I used to. I used to feel really vegetable-y after a shower. And I thought, it's because it's so calming. Well, now that the water's been cleaned, I don't have that experience. And so it makes me like really wonder how much of the stuff we're putting into our system that then that then disconnects us from, and maybe alters our brain state to then, you know, not trust our intuition. Like, that's the rabbit hole that I go down, because I was like, there's got to be, if I was an evil person, I would come at my agenda from every angle, right? Like, I'm like, I'm going to get them through water. I'm going to get them through food. I'm going to get them through air. I'm going to get them through their mattresses. I'm going to get, like, just everywhere. I'm just going to poison everything. And so I get that not everyone can, you know, put in a whole house filtration system. It's not something that people prioritize. Health is a huge part of my life. So is my spiritual health. And I believe that the physical is connected to the spiritual. So I do everything. I spend all my money, it's what I value, on stuff like this. Is there something that the listeners can do from home to help them, you know, start connecting in their day-to-day? I get that there's gratitude practices and meditations, but a lot of people can't sit in a meditation or don't believe that they can sit in meditations. Is there anything that you tell your clients like after they go, or is there anything you can tell the listeners? These are just some little things you can do to try and start connecting with your higher self and being able to receive downloads like you while driving. You obviously you're an open source for your higher self and can receive those downloads. Is there anything we can do, like regular people can do, to receive those downloads, be more open to them, be more receptive?
Look, I would say the number one thing, in my opinion, definitely is meditation, even if people can't or don't think they can do it. And I think often people think they can't do it because they think that it just means I have to sit there and have no thoughts and whatever. I mean, there are so many different types of meditation. I mean, for me, meditation could it's essentially zoning out for me anyway. So it could be, when I'm doing something like gardening and I'm not really thinking and I'm just doing, going with the motions, or even housework, things that, as long as your mind's not racing, and then just paying attention to these little things that come through and listening to them, I think is a really big one. So if you do get a little download, a little thought that just pops in out of nowhere, listen to it. Like for me with that message about fluoride, like I just thought, oh, surely not. Like surely that message didn't start when fluoride came out. But, I sort of trusted it, but I Googled it, so maybe I didn't trust it 100%. I Googled it, but I think I just needed the confirmation, and it was right. I didn't know that. So trusting what you get, because I believe the more that you trust it, the more you'll get and the more receptive you will be, So even with, like I said, meditations could just be, even if someone's going for a massage or getting their nails done or something like that, just, if it's a person that you're having it done with that doesn't want to have a conversation with you, and you can just sit there and just use that time to just try and zone out a bit. I prefer using the term zone out rather than meditate, because meditate, I think, just has this connotation, like I said, that you have to be all thoughts removed, all, and it's not really. I mean, we're human, right? We're going to have these things come in. It's being able to control them is probably more the point, rather than not have any. But I think the zoning out, the trusting is huge. Even practices like, if people are into this kind of stuff, like using a pendulum, for example, to get answers, or doing, the body pendulum thing where you can figure out what's yes and no in your own body, and doing things like that. Tuning into those intuitive things, even using like oracle cards or tarot cards, anything that helps you connect with your intuition, I think will benefit, being able to strengthen that connection, and also understand. It'll help you to begin to understand the difference between your own thoughts and perhaps what is coming through to you intuitively, but you don't know unless you trust it and act on it, and then you work it out from there, I think. And sometimes even journaling or keeping a record of what comes through to you, if you acted on it and what the outcome was, you'll start to see patterns and start to really learn and discern the difference between the two, thoughts or intuition, I think.
It just hit me right as you were saying that. And here I am asking, is there something that someone can do? And I thought, it's literally anything that you feel called to do. And it's funny because there was a period in I had an absolute meltdown, life meltdown. I was super burnt out in 2021, and I had bought these oracle cards, and they were different. So even when I choose crystals or whatever else it is, I will walk around the shop and I will just run my hand along things. And I'm like, where am I going to stop? Where am I intuitively going to stop? And I remember stopping on this deck, and it's not like regular tarot cards or anything. It was just these beautiful cards with beautiful artwork. And during that time, I remember every morning I would get up and just ask the deck questions. And it got me through one of the hardest times in my life. A lot of the stuff, some things made sense and other things didn't in the way that it was written, because there are things from Rumi. They've written it in like little quotes of Rumi, and then they'll explain the card. And it just gave me comfort. And sometimes it didn't give me the answer I wanted. But then that's when I realized that the answer I wanted is the decision I needed to make. It's like, if I'm really wanting it to tell me to leave this situation, then I should probably leave this situation. I don't necessarily need the card to confirm that. I've confirmed that by asking the cards and it not giving me. And a lot of the times I just thought, wow. And I don't do that at the moment. I haven't consulted my cards. I do different things now because I'm called to do different things, you know. And so I love that you said that, because it can literally be in anything. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, you can see my crystals and my sticks and stuff.
Yeah, it's
so
really not.
Depends on the
everyone's going to
situation as
resonate.
well.
Yeah, and everyone's going to resonate with something different, and just going with what you feel called to do as opposed to what you feel you should do. I mean, that's even part of following your intuition. I mean, if you want to learn to connect and follow it, then follow it in that first instance of what you should be doing to connect and follow it. Do you know what I mean? That's the first part. If your intuition says meditation's not for you, but you try and do it anyway, well, it's just not going to work. You know, do something else.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, any way I think people feel called to is okay. And it can change, like in your circumstance, you know, it changes. You know, sometimes people will resonate more with cards. They might switch to crystals. They might, you know, switch to meditation, or it could be,
Literally anything.
Literally
You're so right.
anything. Literally anything. You know, but tea leaf reading. I mean, I remember even as a child, it's funny, even as a, when I say child, probably teenager onwards, teenager to probably mid-20s, I used to do this thing, and I didn't even think about it in this way at the time, but whenever I was stuck on a big life, even if it was a big life decision or a small decision, didn't matter what it was, and people used to think I was crazy, I'd be like, you know, I'm just going to flip a coin because I can't decide. And people are like, how can you flip a coin over a decision? Like, I'm just going to flip a coin. I'm going to go with it. And they're like, what? But funnily enough, I don't know why. I just wanted to recall that was like my thing at the time, and it never failed me. Like, but again, it was because that's what I felt called to do, and I just did it. And again, I didn't think at the time, I'm going to use my intuition. I didn't even think of it that way. It was more just I don't know. I just thought I'm just going to do it. So how I'm going to make a decision, and it never failed me. So. Sorry, it can be literally anything.
So then let me ask you, what got you into this line of work? Were you called to do this? Did you have an experience? I think you said that you had seen someone yourself and it was transformative.
Yeah. Well, I think the part before that is, you know, ever since I was a child, I wanted to help people. And, you know, being a child, you sort of don't really have that understanding as such, but I'd recall, you know, when I was younger, people always used to ask, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, and this kind of stuff. And I used to, when I was really young, I used to say a nurse. But the funny thing was, even when I was saying nurse, I knew I didn't actually want to, like, I couldn't see myself working in a hospital or with sick patients or anything like that. But I suppose that was just my, at the time, understanding of what I've felt called to do was to help. And for me, that was a nurse. I didn't know anything else, you know. And then, you know, growing up throughout school, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I was actually always very interested in human behaviour, how we tick, how our minds work. And so I thought, maybe something like psychology or something like that. So I remember studying that. But I know at the same time that didn't gel either. And so I just did multiple jobs that had absolutely nothing to do really directly with helping people, in the sense that I was thinking anyway, but always trying to find something to study or get into, and nothing really ever stuck. You know, I would start learning things or looking into it, no, this isn't it. And I just came to dead end after dead end. And then, when I had that experience with my session, and then months later when, you know, it hit me, and, you know, I think I mentioned that, you know, then it was like a second whack to the head in that same realization was, oh my God, this is what I need to do. This is how I can help people. And I think that's why I could never really pinpoint exactly what it was that I had to do to help people, because in this line of, well, I say work doesn't really feel like work, but in QHHT, there isn't one thing that you do to help people. You literally, all you do is help them get to that state where they can connect and help themselves. Mm-hmm. And the way that they need help, or the help that they need, is different again for every person. So I could never really pinpoint exactly what I was helping with, or who, or what type of person, because even in this, it's so varied, you know. But that's sort of really what led me into this. And when I remember thinking, well, am I just going to study this and not finish the course like so many other courses I've started and not finished? There's going to be another unfinished course, or, you know, another certificate I do nothing with. But I did it anyway. And it's funny, the minute I started studying it, I just knew as well. I was like, this is it. The information stuck. I didn't struggle to learn it. I actually felt, funnily enough, I felt like I already knew it. Like, there were things obviously I learned, but, you know, when it just resonates so well, you're just like a sponge, you just take it in. You don't have to go to too much effort to try and remember things, or it wasn't a strain. And I was like, no, this is it. This is what I need to do. It went from there. It's just, it really, really I suppose it just resonated, and that's how I knew as well.
It's interesting that you just said that. I said to my husband I just did some courses myself, because I always think to myself, it's such a waste of money if you don't use it, but you do use it. I mean, I'm an ICF certified coach. I had a coaching business. I'm now no longer practicing in the coaching business, but I'm like, you know what? It's taught me to be a better, more understanding human, very expensively.
You still learn skills you carry forward or carry on.
Communication was a massive one. I had such a blocked, I used to always get sore throats. I was always afraid to say what I really thought. And it's funny, you know, as soon as I started speaking up for myself, telling people about my opinions, I lost a lot of people in my life. I suddenly had, you know, a voice, and they're like, oh, we don't like that. So I was like, isn't that interesting? But I did say to my husband the other day, I just studied Food is Medicine and the Psychology of Food, two different courses side by side. And it wasn't until the last session where we were talking about the brain, I was like, wow, this is amazing. The classes before that, I'm like, I can't remember anything. I can't remember anything. I did these courses for months, and I can't remember so many of the things that I learned in Food is Medicine and a lot of the psychology of food until it got to the brain part. I was like, that stuck. And so I was like, okay, so whatever it is that I do next, I'm clearly fascinated. And like you know, I'm fascinated by how the brain operates and brain waves and stuff like that. But it's interesting that you said it doesn't stick, because there are so many things that I have studied that I've thought to myself, well, that was a waste. I don't remember any of it anyway. That was most of my high school years, by the way. I'm like, we don't need any of this. I'm like, we don't need any of this. I instinctively knew. I'm like, I'm not going to use any of this crap when I leave school, so I don't care. And I just, that ease. I was like, something must be wrong with me. So clearly I'm not good at learning in this way, but it might just be that it's not the thing that I'm so interested in that it's going to register. And so you know, if anyone's listening and they're studying and they're really struggling to study, maybe ask yourself if this is really the thing that you are passionate about. Is it the thing that really resonates with your heart? Do you really feel like this is your calling? And if not, maybe you need to, you know, change course or something else.
That's very true. You know, I think sometimes also people do certain courses because they think, oh, I need to get into, I don't know, law or medicine or something like that, like, you know, because I need to earn good money, or I need to, you know, it's a very sort of limited belief to have. You know, I know of people, it's funny you say that school, because I was the same at school. You know, I didn't go to a you know, exclusive private school. I had I did not want to go to university, because I suppose at the time I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do. Like, why would I sign up for a huge debt And people, oh, you have to do you. I was like, no, I don't have to. You know, and it's interesting, you know, the most successful people I know in my life didn't go to uni, or they didn't study these courses, these things that we're taught to believe will lead us, you know, to financial freedom. And they don't. You know, the best people, the most wealthy people I know are either, and I'm not even kidding, even people I've gone to school with, you know, school dropouts, people who, you know, even if they weren't school dropouts, they just, you know, they're sort of lower end of the class, not because they're dumb or anything like that. They just didn't fit that mold, you know. Or I know even in my case, like what you said, I was like, man, what's the point? I was like, I don't need a good score. I'm not going to uni. I don't care, you know. So that was pretty much my thing then. So, you know, these people are running successful businesses. They've got street smarts. They've gone out and learned how things work in the actual world as opposed to how we're taught that it works. Because essentially we're just taught to fit into the system, we're not really taught to use how we can use the system to our advantage. And so, yeah, I mean, I even remember in high school, I still remember I don't know what they called them, like careers teacher or careers advisor or something, you know, the person who would, I think as you were picking your subjects, especially for VCE, they used to get involved and what do you want to do? And you got to pick this and do this. And I remember one day he having my appointment with him, and he was like, well, what do you want to do when you leave school? And I was like, I don't know. And he was really putting pressure on, like, you've got to pick. Like, you've got to know what you want to do because how are you going to pick your subjects? And I was like, I don't know, can I just pick what I like? I don't, like, why do I have to know what I want to do? I remember getting into a bit of a smart-ass argument with him, and to this day, I wish I could contact him. I can't remember his name. I know if someone had said it, I'd click. But I still remember to this day, he kept pushing and pushing. I want to know, you know, you need to know what you're going to do. You need to know what you're going to do. And so I thought, he's not going to let me go until I give him an answer. And so I said, all right, do you want to know what I want to do? I want to see how far I can get in life without a university qualification. That is what I want to do. So what subjects do I pick for VCE for that? And he was like, oh, he was really, and I was like, well, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And yes, that didn't end too well.
That's hilarious. I would have loved to have seen his face.
Yeah, it didn't end too well. But, you know, for someone like, you know, I just think it's just funny, you know, that before I got into this work, you know, I ended up being you know, managing or a general manager of a medical chain of like clinics and things like that. And so, you know, I did all right, you know, like, you know, and that was just all through, you know, not through going to uni straight out of school. I didn't even know what I wanted to do, and it wasn't even something I purposely sought. I just went with the flow of life, I guess, and followed my intuition in a lot of choices I made to get to that point. But yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to try and fit a certain mold. You shouldn't make decisions based on what society or what people think. You know, like you said, if you're doing a course and it's not resonating, ask yourself maybe even why you're doing the course. You know, like sometimes people, I think, do things. It's not. It's because they feel like they had to, or they felt pressure, or, yeah, there's many different reasons. I think, yeah, asking yourself whether it is something you actually want to do is a good step.
My dad's idea of success was you can only be three things. You're either a doctor, a lawyer, or a tennis player. Talk about old school ethnic dad, right? And I just used to be like, I would make a great lawyer, right? I'm someone, I see detail, and I'm really good with detail, but bothered. Like, who could be bothered for that study? Do not have the stomach for a doctor, and I'm not interested in tennis, never have been. But he forced both my sisters, my nieces, like, go play tennis, I'll pay for it, you know? But I remember thinking, like, in grade 6, I mean, I had a transformative experience when I was 7, and that's when I connected to the spirit world, and everything changed for me for that day when my grandfather came to me, and who had passed away, mind you, 2 years beforehand. I said to my year 6 teacher, I want to own a nightclub. That's what I want to do. Like, and that was my answer for everything, because it just was, they just looked at you and were like, everyone wants to be like a bed and an astronaut. I was like, no, I want to own a nightclub, and I want it to be all Prince themed, because that's how I learned English, right? When I moved to this country, I didn't have any friends, so I used to listen to Little Red Corvette and Purple Rain, and Prince is how I learned English. And so I was like, it's going to be a diamonds and pearls theme. So I would just go into detail about this because it got people off my back, because they're like, this kid's weird, and we're just going to stop talking to her. I was like, worked it out very early, how to make people confused. But when I think of now, when I'm older, and I think of why I do what I do, why I even have this podcast, why I speak to, incredible women like you, and the universe keeps bringing women to me that, universal synchronicities. You and I are like the same people, I feel like, in so many ways.
I was going to say, and this will flip your mind as well, because when you said it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, are you me? Like, what's going on here? Because when I left, or when I finished BCE, I applied, and again, I don't know why. Like I said, I didn't actually even want to do this, but I applied to get into law at, where was it? I can't remember if it was La Trobe or Deakin back then. I can't even remember. Anyway, but I applied to get into law because I don't know how it works now, but back then the scores you needed for things used to go up or down as well, and I think depending on how popular it was. Anyway, so for some miraculous reason, I think law was a low score to get into, or lower than usual. So I thought, I'll apply for that. I've always been interested in law too, because I studied psychology, I used to like psychology and law.
Yeah.
And I got into it, but I thought, I don't want to do it. I want to just defer for a year and I'll start working. And then so I never actually went ahead and did it. And so that you say, I was obsessed with Prince. I'm like, I was obsessed, like the old school Prince, like, When Doves Cry, the Red Corvette.
I'm emotional.
Yeah, I used to love, and I was just listening, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's going on?
Yeah. But honestly, he was not from this world, Nadia. He was not from this world.
He was very, I was about to say, have you seen some of his older interviews? And and I love, even the moments he has where people would think he was being rude. I see things a little bit differently. He would sit there and sometimes not answer people, or that time, was it, they did that song, what was it, Heal the World or something, and he was just sitting there with the light. He was like, I'm not gonna sing. But I see it from a different perspective. He's kind of like, none of this really matters, and he understood all of that.
Yeah.
He really did. He understood that on a level that it was almost like there's no point. The world was not ready for him to.
Wasn't that like Heal the World anyway?
Yeah.
And he was like, none of you care about healing the world. Like, shut up, And that's
exactly. They're just doing it for the money. It's always like, he's like, this song doesn't even really matter. Like, they're just, okay, they're going to sit there and record a song, but what are they actually doing? I mean, some of these people have enough money or enough influence to actually make a change. Are they doing that? No, they're just recording a song to make more money for the record company and for them. So it's, even when he changed his name, or, I thought that was really funny, because the record company had these, obviously he had a contract with the record company as Prince to do all this stuff, and he didn't want to do it, and he worked out a workaround was to change his name, because the contract was with an artist called Prince. And so he changed his name, obviously, to just the symbol. There was no name, so just the artist formerly known as Prince. And all of a sudden that voided his contract. I was like, oh, man, this is clever.
He's a legend. He's a legend.
Yes.
Soul legend, human existence legend. Like, that man, I listened to him a lot. Like I said, I learned English listening to him. Listening to him made me feel like I existed. It's funny, like here I'm like a 7-year-old, six. I moved here when I was 5.5, thinking to myself, for some reason, I felt like he's the only person that understood me. I remember when he died, Nadia, like I was literally meant to go see his show at the Opera House. I was waiting for the tickets. I couldn't get through. By the time I did, they were like $500, and at the time I couldn't afford it. I took days off. I was bawling my eyes out. I couldn't work. My grandparents died. I didn't cry, which sounds ridiculous, but I think that when you find another being in the world, and you and I really believe in connecting with music, through music. That's always been a huge part of my life. And I think that when you find people that you connect with, like even with you, right? Like I have become really drawn to women that I've had on the podcast. And how would I have ever have known that you were obsessed with Prince? Like my husband laughs. I'm looking for artwork for this wall. I'm looking for artwork that, I saw an artwork in a house. It was just his face, black and white. It was beautiful. I was like, I need that. Can't find it. If anyone listening knows where I can get really amazing Prince artwork, please contact me. I've been looking for 8 months. But how would I have known? Like, I just feel like, it's a beautiful, beautiful part of, I think, this universal language, and that there are some of us, I'm hoping a lot of us, that are starting to connect to it and that are starting to find each other. I feel like ever since 2021, when I said, that's it, I've had enough, I need my people just came. And I found that with this podcast, especially, the more understanding I get of who I am, the woman that I want to be, what I want to contribute to this world, the more women that keep coming to me that have that same desire. And so I'd love to know what your North Star is for what you do. Like, why does this work mean so much to you?
Yeah, I suppose ultimately it's the impact. It's the impact that it can have on people, and it's not even me doing it. I think really it's being able to empower people for them to realize that they always have this connection. Sure, in a session it can become clearer, and it helps because I'm there asking questions and they're able to let the answers come through them. But they can always do it. And so empowering them to do that and to know that you don't have to go to anyone outside of yourself ever for answers.
Thank you.
That's huge. And, that's what I also love about this work. It's not come see me every week for 8 months. I see them once, that's it. I mean, there are people that have had more than one session, but myself included, but that's because, there might be, there might be people who are like, there's other things that crop up in their life, or, that they're curious about, and they just want, it's a bit like a fast track, I suppose, for certain things. So, but ultimately for a particular concern or problem, it's the one session. And you can get what you need for that. So it's empowering in that way, and I love that. I think for me that's what guides me, is being able to show people that they can do that themselves. Yeah.
On the topic of empowering, what do you love about being a woman, Nadia?
Good question. Actually, I don't really. I know this is sound really funny. I'm not. I mean, I do think of myself as a woman. I don't identify as anything else, but I don't think of myself in that way. If that makes sense. I don't think of myself in the way that, I love being a woman because of X, Y, Z. I would think I love being me because of X, Y, Z. If that makes sense.
It does. So what is it that you love about being you then?
So I suppose I really love my, just being able to be, it's going to sound really weird maybe, but just being able to be curious and being able to follow that. And that I allow myself to do that is probably a big thing. So, I can become very curious about things and want to learn more, and I will just take myself down whatever rabbit hole, whatever I have to do to find more information about things. But then ultimately being able to then share that with others and giving myself permission to do that, I think is a big thing. And, I don't really, anyone can do that. So it's not really woman specific, if that makes sense. But, I just love being able to do and find out things and learn things, of building things. Like literally I'm the kind of person who, as an example, the other day I was speaking to a friend of mine and I said, I'm really interested in these vibroacoustic beds, the sound healing energy
I've never
beds.
heard of this. No, oh my God. What are these beds?
Oh, it's essentially a bed you lay on, or like it's like essentially like a big massage table, but it sends sound waves through your body. So different frequencies through sound waves. And it's like these headphones, you can listen to stuff at the same time, etc. And this is just how my brain works. I'm like, oh, I want one of those.
Yes.
They sound really cool. Yeah, I'm like, I really need. Yeah, see, but that's the thing. Like, I look at them and then I'm like, I could make that.
Oh.
And so, anyway, I was saying to my friend, the other day, I was like, oh, yes, I'm making this vibroacoustic bed. And I was telling her all about it. And she's like, of course you are. She was like, and she's like, can't you just go and buy one like a normal person would just go and do? And I'm like, yeah, but I just,
you
like, I've
know,
seen.
like, every intricate part.
I just need to. Yeah, I just wanted to. And plus, when I realized how easy they were to make, I was like, right, okay. And I do know a little bit about like sound waves and frequencies. And luckily, my husband is very, very tech minded in that sense.
That helps.
He used to work in that type of industry, so that side of it helps. So he helped me pick the type of equipment and things to buy to make it, because I was like, I want it to be able to do this, 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 and this. These are bits I need. And he helped me out with that, because I couldn't quite find a bed that had all the bits I wanted. And I was like, I'll just make it.
Of course.
So when I told my friend, she was like, of course you're doing that. Like, why, why would, yeah. So, I think that's what I mean, like my ability to just investigate and work things out and then even build them if I have to. But I'm like, I'm going to make that. I've done that with a lot of things in my life. But, yeah, I love that.
It's so fitting, your answer, because when I created this podcast, I created it on, the foundations of women finding peace through clarity, purpose through inspiration, and the permission to be themselves through the stories of other women. And you've literally, I don't think we hit the peace part, but the purpose and permission. For sure. Like, and I do think that a lot of that is a big part of being a woman. I think that women don't give themselves enough permission to be who they truly are and to follow their real desires and dreams. I think we've been conditioned to think that we cannot, and we struggle to find purpose because our lives are so focused on the people that we love. And so how do we find our North Star? And while that might not be, a trait or a characteristic of a woman, it really is the story of all women. And so that just felt so beautiful for me. Nadia, we could talk for hours on this. You and I are like the same person. I'm like, we need to talk afterwards. Even when you were just saying that, I'm like, I've known you for a total of 2.5 hours now. And I could have said you probably made it. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like I would have done the same thing. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. I can't wait for people to hear this episode. Can you please tell people where they can find you, how they can work with you?
Yeah. So my website is QHHTaustralia.com.au. I'm also on Instagram, which is QHHT.Australia. They're probably the two main ways. Easiest ways to contact me.
Amazing. If you are interested in connecting with Nadia, I will include in the episode description and across socials links and ways you can do that. So if you haven't already, head on over to Spotify and Instagram and follow the Skin I'm In podcast to be the first to know when new episodes drop. Nadia, thank you so much for being a guest on the Skin I'm In podcast.
No, thank you. I've loved it. It's been great chatting.
Oh my God. I'm going to be honest. I have no idea where to start. The universe is such a powerful force. And the more episodes I record, the stronger and deeper my belief and connection becomes to the godly divine essence that is all knowing. Why else would Nadia have been brought into my sphere? My favorite takeaway, though, from this episode is a tough one because, I adore Prince. I really do believe he is a starseed who came to this timeline to show us the way and remind us how divine we all are. And because of that, the establishment that stands to be exposed by his knowledge couldn't possibly allow such a talented human being to remind and educate all other human beings that they are just as divine and that each of us has a gift to give to this world like he did. He had music and a message to give to this world. You all have something like that within you. You all have a message. You definitely all have a message. You might not be as musically inclined, but you all have a message. If you haven't listened to Prince's interviews, take the time to do so. He is such a cool cat. He is so funny and he's incredibly wise. I don't use past tense to refer to him for a reason, and that's because I truly believe that he continues to exist through his music, and for me, he always will. Putting aside our shared passion for such a talented man, the synchronicities between Nadia and I are palatable. I could literally talk to her for hours about all the things. And it's funny how we are given exactly who we need when we need it. I really, really needed to hear that our practice to connect to the higher self can be anything. My practice has always been yoga, walks in the morning in the first ray of daylight that I could possibly get. And it's also to be on my spin bike. I really love having that morning ritual. And ever since we got our new puppy, Lucci, trying to take care of her while still caring for her big brother Enzo, who's almost 2, running the household, working full time, recording podcasts, and just trying to do everyday tasks with a very happy puppy who needs cuddles throughout the night has meant that I'm exhausted and have very little time or freedom to practice my daily morning yoga or take Enzo for our early morning walks. It's not been easy and I feel incredibly off balance. So for the meantime, I know I need to find something else to send to me while we raise Lucci to be as self-sufficient as Enzo is. Until then, she is literally on my lap during all recordings until further notice. As you know, discovering the meaning of, what there is to love about being a woman has become such a focus for me from season 1 of the Skin I'm In podcast. And while I really do think that it is still relevant, I wonder if Nadia's answer to the question was a message for me that loving what there is about being a woman is really, in essence, what you love about being yourself and what you love about the women in your life and the value that they add to you. Reflecting on this conversation even further, I have so much respect and appreciation for the fact that Nadia called out from her own experience that the studies that didn't make sense to her at the time are never a waste. They are opportunities to be redirected into discovering what your thirst for knowledge really is. And that could be anything. Like I said, I just finished a couple of short courses called Food is Medicine and the Psychology of Food. And while I enjoyed the courses, I have no intention on being a nutritionist or a wellness coach. My interest is in what can I nourish my body with and the bodies of those I love, including our 2 dogs, that will support us in thriving. What is going to give me the energy I need to follow my passions? What is going to help my husband sustain his extremely physical work for as long as possible? What's going to keep the coats and the guts of my 2 delicious pups in healthy condition so that they can live their best lives for as long as possible? Because let me tell you, I can't even imagine the day that they're no longer with me. Oh my God, stop it. I can't. Yes, it was all super interesting to study those 2 subjects. And it wasn't until the last day of the Psychology of Food course that I really realized that what I truly wanted to find out more about was what our diet, like what effect our diet has on our organs, especially on our brain, and the precious, precious little cone-shaped gland that sits between the epithalamus, where the 2 halves of the thalamus is, which is basically the 2 sides of our brain. It sits in that crevice, that join, and no one really knows what it's there for. I have a theory, obviously, as I do for many, many things. But I truly believe that there is something divine about it, something portal-like about it, something connective about it. I honestly feel led down a path at the moment to truly understand what our connection to the divine is, what the godly presence in our lives is that is all-knowing, has in store for us, and the messages that it wants to download to us and is just waiting for us to just say, I'm open to hear what that message is. And I sincerely believe that our pineal gland is a gateway for us to access lost wisdom and that little superpower house that has been planted within us to remind how godly we truly are. It is my sincere hope that I get to see the discovery of this in my lifetime, and if not, I hope that I'm the one who discovers it in my next life. With gratitude and grace, have a wonderful day.